If you were trapped in a never-ending tunnel that was full of deadly automated traps, what would you do? This woman isn't sure whether she's been abducted by aliens or taken to the afterlife, but the only way out is to keep moving forward. And even death is only a temporary escape. Hopefully you're not claustrophobic, because we're here to break down the mistakes made, what you should do, and how to escape from the tunnel of death in Meander. This woman is about to have the most insane experience of her life. Far out in the countryside, there's a young woman lying on her back in the middle of the road, nervously watching as she sees a truck getting closer. The truck keeps coming with no signs of slowing down, but at the last moment, the woman gets to her feet and steps aside. The driver asks her if she needs a ride, but the woman wisely turns him down. And he says that she'll find the nearest gas station about 7 miles up the road before putting the truck into gear and driving away. Before he can get far, she decides that she'd rather take a chance on the ride after all, and he silently opens the passenger side door for her to get in. But that was her biggest mistake. They introduce themselves as Adam and Lisa, and the man notices from her accent that she must be from France. When he asks her if she has any family around, Lisa replies that her daughter would have been 9 years old today. Opening up a bit, she says that the one thing she'd want the most in the world is just to be able to see her daughter again. And that's when Adam here starts going off on some nihilistic shit about how everyone dies alone. At this point, Lisa is starting to get a bit creeped out, so she decides to turn on the radio as a distraction, only to be immediately greeted with a lighthearted news story about a recent double murder where the killer still hasn't been found. Uh-oh. According to the police, the suspect is a white male with short hair and a cross tattoo on his hand. Holy shit, it's him. Lisa looks at the man in stunned disbelief, but before she can even react, he slams on the brakes and causes her head to collide with the dashboard, knocking her out cold. Okay, well, that didn't take very long. The craziest part about it is that we're actually witnessing history in the making right now, because Lisa here might have just beat out Annie from Friday the 13th's record for the getting killed while hitchhiking any percent speedrun. At least Annie actually managed to get out of the car before she bit the big one. But as for you, Lisa, you f***ed up. This right here is why your grandma always tried to tell you to never take rides from strangers. But since you apparently need a reminder here, Lisa, let me fill you in on a little something. The reason why we don't do things like this is because you never know what the person's intentions are. There's no way to tell whether you're getting in the car with Mr. Rogers or Jeffrey Dahmer, so it's always better to stay on the safe side than to find out the hard way, especially when you're out in the middle of nowhere, where there's not a single other living soul around to help you if the guy turns out to be some kind of freak. But you didn't stop there. Oh no, because about 30 fucking seconds into the ride, you're hitting this complete and total stranger with the old, "Yep, I'm traveling completely alone in a foreign country with no friends or family who wouldn't notice or care if I suddenly went missing, never to be seen again." Why do you ask, my good fellow? In the future, what we're not going to do is tell this guy who we just met all about our personal lives. Instead, spin him a nice yarn about how you just got your black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and how your dad also happens to be Liam Neeson from Taken. That should make him think twice before he tries any funny business. Now, believe it or not, once you realized that your Uber driver here was a wanted killer, you did actually have the option of doing something besides just staring at him like a deer in headlights while you waited for the cold embrace of death. Fucking punch him in the nose, grab the wheel, and force the car off of the road. Even just leap out and hit the high-speed tactical roll like Annie did back in the 80s. I'm not saying it'll guarantee your survival, but it's better than getting knocked out on the dashboard without so much as putting up a fight. The worst part about all of this is that you totally could have made the walk without even needing a ride in the first place. The directions back to town were pretty simple. Just keep walking straight down the road. 7 miles through the middle of nowhere isn't exactly a leisurely stroll, and it doesn't help that it was getting late, but at a brisk pace, you could have made that in just over 2 hours. And you could cut that time in half if you stepped it up to a light jog. Of course, there's always the risk that he could have just waited up the road a bit to ambush you, but I'd rather take my chances with that than be trapped in the passenger seat of his truck. Bottom line, there's a reason why we're taught not to just hop in cars with random strangers from a very young age. And sometimes giving people the benefit of the doubt is just too risky. You'd think that crossing paths with Adam here would be the worst thing to happen to her today, but somehow things are about to get even crazier than anything she could have ever imagined. I'm sorry, Lisa, but you really f***ed up. To her relief, Lisa eventually wakes up, seemingly unharmed, but that relief won't last long. As she looks around, she realizes that she's been trapped inside of a confined steel box with a pale blue light shining through a series of dots and dashes on all four walls. Whoever brought her here also dressed her in a futuristic-looking jumpsuit and strapped a strange device with a band of yellow light to her arm. Listening closely, she can hear what sounds like machinery and uncanny voices coming from somewhere on the other side. So she starts shouting desperately for someone to help, but it's no use. Instead, she tries muscling her way out by using all of her strength to press against the walls and ceiling, but there's clearly no chance of her getting anything to budge. Her last hope comes when she gets the idea to try using the device on her wrist to scrape through the wall, but again, no luck. And with tears rolling down her face, Lisa backs herself into a corner like a caged animal, with nothing left to do but wait and see what happens next. Okay, Lisa here is lucky to be alive, but now it looks like fighting off her kidnapper just became the least of her problems. When she hit her head on the dashboard, the absolute last place that she was probably expecting to wake up was inside of some strange, futuristic-looking animal cage. The thing is made of impenetrable metal, leaving her with no possible way of breaking out with nothing but her bare hands. She's tried yelling for help, but obviously that's not working. And using the device on her wrist to scrape through was actually a great idea. It's just too bad that the walls of the cage are much too sturdy for her to make any real progress. It was a good try, but unfortunately right now it doesn't look like she's going anywhere anytime soon. All that Lisa can do at this point is sit and wait to see what happens next. But she should still try to come up with some kind of plan, just in case she suddenly gets an opportunity to escape. There's no way to tell why she was brought here or by who, but unless their plan is to just leave her trapped in this cage until she dies, then sooner or later someone is going to have to open the hatch to give her some food and water, or possibly even come inside. One strategy could be just to jump the first person that comes in using the heavy thing on her wrist to give them a beatdown, and then trying to fight her way out of there, wherever there is. If that isn't an option, then she should just try to pay attention to any small details that might show a weakness in their security. Maybe whoever trapped her there comes on a schedule, and she can use this knowledge to get the jump on them. Or there's some flaw in the construction of the box that she can exploit to get free. It might seem like there's nothing much in there for Lisa to work with, but if you're paying attention, then you've probably noticed something about those lights on the wall. They're not just some kind of weird alien art. The combination of only dots and dashes make it obvious that they've written something in Morse code. For those of us who might not be familiar, Morse code is a system that uses dots and dashes to represent each letter of the alphabet and the numbers 0 through 9. So if you're trying to say SOS, you'd use 3 dots for both S's and 3 dashes for the O's. The difficult part is figuring out what the messages actually say. But if Lisa here happens to know Morse code, she could try figuring it out to see if there's anything that could help her. It might take a while, but it's not like there's much else to do at the moment. On the bright side, it turns out that Lisa won't be trapped in this box for very long, but what happens next is going to make her wish that she'd never gotten out. Hey everyone, we're going to take a quick break from talking about being trapped in a tunnel to talk about another kind of trap: subscription services. Let's face it, keeping track of expenses can feel like a never-ending tunnel full of death traps. Just the other day, I realized I was still paying for several streaming services that I haven't used in months, and those bad boys can really drain your wallet. But fear not, my budgeting warriors. This is where Rocket Money, today's sponsor, comes in to save the day. Rocket Money is your all-in-one finance app that helps you take control of your hard-earned cash. One of my favorite features is the subscription tracker. It finds those sneaky reoccurring charges and lets you cancel them with just a few taps. No more wading through endless customer service menus and rage quitting. But that's not all. Rocket Money also helps you set up a personalized budget so you can see exactly where your money is going. This way, you can allocate your funds towards your goals, whether it's that dream vacation or a down payment on a new car. Plus, Rocket Money can even negotiate your bills for things like internet and cable. It's like having a how-to-beat plan for your finances. Stop feeling overwhelmed by your finances and become a budgeting boss with Rocket Money. Sign up for free today and take control of your financial future. Just head on over to rocketmoney.com/how-to. That's rocketmoney.com/how-to for free access to powerful budgeting tools and subscription management. Now, let's get back to Lisa and see if she can escape this tunnel. All of a sudden, a hatch on one of the walls slides open, and behind it, Lisa sees that it leads into a long, narrow tunnel with a bright white light at the far end. This looks like a way out, but it could also be a trap, and there's really no way to tell what will happen if she climbs inside. She cautiously decides to make her way into the tunnel. Sure enough, the hatch immediately seals shut behind her. And now that she can't go back even if she wanted to, it looks like Lisa's only choice is to keep moving forward. To make matters even worse, the device on her wrist suddenly starts counting down from 11 minutes, and Lisa isn't sure what happens when it hits 0, but she has a strong feeling that she'd rather not find out. Taking her sweet old time, Lisa begins slowly crawling through the tunnel inch by inch. But just when she reaches about halfway to the end, a wall in front of her suddenly slides across the path and seals her in. Terrified, the woman doubles her pace, reaching the end only to find out that there really is no way through. She's trapped again, but not completely, because to her right, there's a second, much narrower passage that runs perpendicular to the tunnel that she's in. So after turning her body sideways to fit between the walls, she forces her way inside and begins wriggling through the cramped chute. Okay, yep, somehow this is even worse than the cage, but at least now Lisa has the chance to actually make some progress here. We still don't know who or what built this place, or if we're even still on planet Earth, but to give ourselves the best chance of survival, we need to stay grounded in reality. And with all of the crazy stuff that's been going on, there's one important detail that might be easy to overlook: Lisa's limited supply of oxygen. In the real world, the closest comparable activity to what Lisa is doing here has to be cave exploration. The close quarters and poor ventilation of these spaces means that one of a caver's biggest concerns is making the most of their air supply. Since there's nowhere for fresh oxygen to come in, the carbon dioxide that Lisa is breathing out can quickly build up and cause her to suffocate. That would be a pretty way to go out after making it this far, so to avoid having that happen, Lisa needs to focus on taking things slow. I'm talking about controlled breaths, inhaling through her nose, and exhaling through her mouth. Not only will this help to stretch out her oxygen supply for as long as possible, but it will also keep her calm and focused on the ultimate goal, which is getting the hell out of this nightmare contraption. It's a small thing, but in a life or death scenario like this, every detail counts. And keeping that breathing in check is the first step to eventually escaping. The squeeze is terrifying, but thankfully only one body length long, allowing Lisa to quickly pull herself through. This next tunnel is almost identical to the first one, except without the promise of an escape to keep her moving towards the other side. Using the device on her wrist to light the way, Lisa continues forward until she eventually comes to a point where the tunnel splits into an upper and lower section, with a raised platform running down the center. The woman carefully inspects both of her options, with no clear differences between the two. She decides to go with her gut and chooses to go up. After pulling herself up onto the platform, Lisa begins crawling forwards on her hands and knees, the higher ceiling of this tunnel allowing her to stretch out a little, but suddenly the platform starts quickly rising up towards the ceiling, threatening to squash her like a pancake if she doesn't get out in time. Panicking, Lisa crawls for the other end like her life depends on it, and only barely manages to make it through without being crushed, collapsing from exhaustion into the tunnel on the other side. The woman lies there for a moment trying to catch her breath, but the device on her wrist quickly reminds her that there's no time to lose. Behind her, the platform lowers back down to its original position, as if the tunnel is automatically resetting itself for the next unfortunate victim. It isn't long before Lisa finds concrete proof that she's not the only one to pass through there. Up ahead, she spots the silhouette of another person with a similar device strapped to their wrist, but when she calls out to them, the person doesn't respond. As she gets closer, Lisa quickly realizes why they weren't answering. Whoever it was is dead. And not just the regular kind of dead, but the body torn to pieces and half turned to goop kind of dead. The only way forward is over the poor guy's corpse, and Lisa very reluctantly begins pulling pieces of the decayed flesh aside so that she can squeeze by. After painstakingly moving the body out of her way, Lisa is able to continue on ahead, but now there's only 2 minutes left to go. Okay, that was a close one. Lisa is actually making some solid progress so far. And after passing the first trap, there are a few important things that she might have picked up on that could tell us more about what's actually going on here. First, we have our dead body. Gross, but also informative. This slimy skeleton here is proof that Lisa isn't the only person to ever be trapped in these tunnels, and also that she's not the first one to make it this far. That could be good news, but then again, since this is the spot where they died, and there are only 2 minutes left on the timer, this probably means that we're in for some trouble soon. And if I were Lisa, I'd be on the lookout for another trap or challenge that's about to happen. The end of the tunnel might be close by, and whatever happened to this guy could be the consequence for not making it out before the clock hits 0. So I'd suggest picking up the pace a bit. That way we won't share the same fate. Our main focus needs to be on whatever lies ahead of us, but the platform trap resetting after she'd passed it also indicates that there might be more prisoners running the course next. This combined with the body shows that these tunnels weren't specifically made for Lisa, but instead she must have been caught up in some kind of larger experiment. I seriously doubt that the guy driving the car had the skills or resources to make something like this, so there must be a bigger picture to the whole thing. And that could be important later if we find any more hints as to what the ultimate goal of all of this really is. Being stuck down here with other players could also mean big trouble, but the situation could get dangerous quickly if it turns out that they're not friendly. With this in mind, Lisa should try to keep a low profile and try to stay as quiet as she reasonably can. That way, she'll hopefully notice them before they notice her, and then she'll have a chance to decide what to do about it. Besides that, there might be a way that this dead guy can still help her out. I'd try taking the device from his arm because it might be useful down the road. It could be used as a weapon, a distraction, a way to check for traps, or even a tool to hold doors open or something if she ever needs to. Since there's so little for her to work with here in these tunnels, any advantage that she can give herself is going to make a serious difference. And even if it turns out to be useless, it's an opportunity that I probably wouldn't pass up. The tunnel ahead of her extends for farther than the eye can see, but after crawling for about a minute, a metal grate suddenly lowers down from the ceiling, cutting off the way forward. At the same time, the light on her wrist turns red with only 1 minute left on the clock, and dozens of small torches appear out of the walls, threatening to burn her alive. Terrified, Lisa yanks on the grate, desperately trying to get through, but that's when a section of the wall behind her opens up, creating a small area of safety. Lisa scrambles back to it and rolls inside just in time, but is frightened when a clear barrier traps her in. It's a good thing that she made it though, because as soon as the timer hits 0, the entire tunnel fills with 2 staggered whirlwinds of flame, which would definitely have turned her into dust if she hadn't reached the hideaway. The barrier opens, and the wall slides back into place, pushing Lisa back out into the tunnel. As it does, the ceiling starts to lower down towards her, and Lisa gives up, thinking that she's about to be crushed. But it stops just a few inches from her face, leaving her with only about 1.5 feet of space to work with. Not wanting to be barbecued like the last guy, she takes a deep breath and presses on as the timer on her wrist resets to 11 minutes. Crawling on her back and unable to get a good look at where she's headed, Lisa eventually arrives at a spot where she can feel that the floor drops down into a deep puddle of water. She wastes a lot of time getting herself a drink, but with already less than 9 minutes left on the clock, she's eventually forced to hold her breath and plunge down into the next section. Okay, wow, somehow it really does just keep getting worse. As if being trapped in an endless tunnel wasn't bad enough, now she won't even be able to breathe until she's through the next section. Super! There's no other way that she can go, but since we also don't know how long she's going to have to be under there, it's absolutely crucial that Lisa makes this breath last as long as she possibly can. The current record for holding your breath while free diving, which is diving without the help of an oxygen tank, sits at an insane 22 minutes, but these guys spend years training and get to use all kinds of fancy tricks like breathing in pure oxygen beforehand. As for us average swimmers like Lisa here, we're working with just a little bit less time, between 30 seconds and a minute and a half. Don't let that make you nervous though, because like any other survival scenario, the first key to making it through this alive is to remain calm. Easy enough when you're about to meet a watery grave in Alien Jigsaw's tunnel of death, am I right? To make it to the other side, Lisa needs to take a deep breath through her nose to fully expand her diaphragm, and allow her lungs to fill with as much air as physically possible. While underwater, she needs to make slow, controlled movements to save energy, and navigate using one of the walls of the tunnel as a guide so that she won't get turned around. The floor in this area drops out into a much larger chamber, but it's filled with water all the way up to the ceiling, forcing Lisa to scramble for an exit before she drowns. Moving quickly, she follows along the ceiling until a section of it finally opens up, and she's able to climb through back into another tunnel further up ahead. There's a moment where Lisa can catch her breath, but then seconds later, this area begins to fill up with water too, and her only choice is to stay as close to the ceiling as she can while she waits for the flooding to stop. Finally, the chamber fills up completely, and she's able to swim up through a hatch on the other side, gasping for air as she once again finds herself in a long, low tunnel just like the one that she started in. It's slow progress, and after a while, Lisa starts to give into her exhaustion, ready to give up, but that's when the strangest thing happens. From somewhere in the darkness, she hears the unmistakable sound of a living man calling out for help. Shocked, Lisa begins crawling as quickly as she can towards the sound of the man's voice, following his shouts deeper and deeper into the tunnel. In her hurry, she's nearly killed when the floor below her suddenly pulls away, revealing a pit of bubbling green ooze that's about 6 feet long. Thinking carefully, Lisa tears off a strip from her jumpsuit and lowers it down as a way to test the puddle below. The moment that it touches the liquid, the strip of fabric sizzles and melts, clearly indicating that she does not want to go for a swim. Still, the only way out is over it, so Lisa steadies herself against the walls of the tunnel and starts slowly ninja warrioring her way across. It's a tense moment, but she makes it all the way to the end without falling in, until just as she's nearly home free, she slips and lets the top of her right knee briefly touch the surface. But she's able to make it to safety with only a quarter-sized patch of skin missing from her knee. Okay, that looked like it hurt, but this stuff could also be a chance for a major breakthrough, literally. There's no way to tell exactly what kind of liquid that we're dealing with here, but just by looking at it, we can narrow it down to either some kind of acid or an alien substance that we don't have here on Earth. What we do know is that it's highly corrosive and might even eat right through the walls of the tunnel if she can find a way to apply it safely. Lisa doesn't have any tools right now, but if she could find some kind of durable container, maybe it would hold out long enough for her to at least try to use this acid to her advantage. It's a long shot, but it couldn't hurt to try if she has the chance. With her leg now badly injured, Lisa keeps following the sound of the man's voice until she comes to a section where there's a circular hole in the floor leading into an identical tunnel directly below her, so she lowers herself headfirst through the hole and begins crawling in the opposite direction back towards him. Finally, she comes to another grate blocking the path where she can see the man stuck behind a similar one a few yards away. This guy is not keeping it together as well as Lisa here, and when she tries to rally him so that the two of them can work together to get out of this place, his only response is to keep babbling, "I'm sorry," and laughing like a madman the more that she tries to talk to him. Lisa tries to ask him what's on his side, but he shouts back that it's only the tube and warns her to stay quiet, otherwise they will come back and kill her. The device on both of their arms suddenly turns red, leaving them with just 1 minute to go. At the same time, the torches suddenly emerge from up above, and a single safe area opens out of the wall, but this time, it's in the tunnel about halfway between the two of them. The gates go up, and the two begin scrambling for the hole, ferociously fighting each other like wild animals to see who gets to live, pinning his arm with her feet until the clear barrier drops and slices it right off. Looking at the man's other hand, she notices that he has a cross tattoo, and realizes that it's the same man who attacked her way back before this whole thing started. 1 second later, a burst of flames engulfs the chamber, and the man is burned to death before her eyes. But this won't be the last that we see of him. Exhausted, Lisa passes out, only to wake up sometime later still trapped in the hideout. All of a sudden, a circular hole in the ceiling opens up, and out of it descends a freaky-ass human skull attached to some kind of advanced technological device. Approaching her, the skull heals the wound on Lisa's leg, and produces a tube from its mouth that connects to a port on her stomach, somehow showing her the memory of how she was attacked by Adam and fell out of his car, where the last thing that she saw was the stars all forming together to create a giant orb of blinding light in the sky. Okay, Lisa here really handled him, am I right? At least she got payback on her attacker, and even made a brief moment of contact with whatever it is that's in control of this whole place. But somehow, I'm actually even more confused. This can't be the afterlife unless Adam died too, so as crazy as it sounds, the only logical explanation seems to be that we were both abducted by aliens back there on the highway, and that this is some kind of alien death game. On the bright side, at least Lisa is clearly winning so far. She could have tried attacking that skull and seeing if that helped with anything, but it probably wouldn't be a good idea to risk pissing off whoever's running this contraption anyway. Maybe she could use the skull's fancy headgear to scoop up some of that acid that she passed a bit further back and use it to melt through the walls like we mentioned before. I'll admit that there's an extremely low chance of that actually working out like she plans, but with all of this other weird that's going on, I might give it a try if I was feeling really desperate. Meanwhile, one thing that she can definitely do is to try and use Adam's arm to her advantage in some way. Just like we mentioned with the body from way back during the first trap, his arm, or even just the cuff on it, could be used for a variety of purposes. Whether that's for fighting, distracting someone, checking for traps, or holding doors open so that she can backtrack. After showing her the vision, the skull retreats back into the ceiling, and the clear barrier opens up, allowing Lisa to keep going. Checking Adam's severed hand, she discovers a strange tattoo on his wrist of X surrounded by 2 diamonds. Suddenly, a spinning fan blade begins coming down the tunnel towards her, and Lisa is forced to crawl away backwards until she manages to escape through another hole in the ceiling. The timer on her wrist is already counting down, but if she thinks that she's been through the worst of it, then boy, Lisa here is in for a surprise. All of a sudden, she hears something moving rapidly through the tunnel above her, and from out of another hole crawls what can only be described as a zombie. Horrified, Lisa starts crawling for her life with the ghoul in hot pursuit, finally managing to shake him when she reaches another series of tight bends that he doesn't seem to be able to follow her through. There's no time to relax though, because there's only 6 minutes left on the countdown, leaving her no choice but to keep going. Okay, just when I was thinking that things couldn't get any worse, now we've got zombified Adam to deal with. And this thing is absolutely terrifying, but something that I noticed right away is that his eyes seem to have been blinded by the flames, and the fact that he didn't start chasing Lisa until after she'd made a loud noise with her cuffs backs that theory up. Knowing this, the key to avoiding him must be to try and make as little noise as possible whenever he's around. And any amount of distance that she can put between the two of them before the real chase starts will be extremely important. You definitely don't want to get into a fight with this guy down here, so when push comes to shove, the best choice, keep crawling for your life. And hopefully one of the traps will eventually take him out. If he does manage to catch her, then the device on her arm could make for a great head-smashing tool, but it would be hard to get a good shot at him in these conditions. So she should try avoiding a direct confrontation for as long as she can. In the next chamber, Lisa is offered her second choice. This time, she has to choose between 2 identical tunnels to her left or right. Checking them both, she decides to go with the one on the left for no particular reason. She hears the sound of a child humming, but it's not just any child. She can tell right away that she's hearing the voice of her dead daughter. The tunnel emerges into a strange, white room with touchscreen walls that show her vivid memories of her past. She sees her father through the eyes of herself as a baby in her crib. It's like her entire life literally flashing before her eyes, including the day where her daughter tragically passed away by falling out of an open window at their old apartment. Heartbroken, Lisa whispers a tearful apology to the girl for not being there for her, but that's when she hears a menacing series of thuds quickly approaching, and when she looks up, she sees a human silhouette crawling through the tunnel above. It's the zombie, and as she escapes into the next section, the creature lowers down from the hatch in the ceiling, quickly crawling into the tunnel behind her. There is a point ahead where Lisa has to climb up a steep slope, but she's able to wedge herself between the walls and shimmy her way up before the creep can get to her. The tunnel above isn't any better, as it's filled with a cluster of vines covered in razor-sharp thorns blocking the path. But on the other side, freedom. Suddenly, the device on her wrist lights up. Only 1 minute left, and the torches emerge from the walls. So with no other choice, Lisa begins forcing her way between the thorns. She puts up a good fight, but the pain is too much for her to bear, and she collapses just inches from the finish line. The countdown ends, and now it's time for incineration. But just when she's about to be air fried like a chicken nugget, the floor of the tunnel suddenly drops out, and she falls away into a dark void below. After a while, Lisa wakes up only to find that she's right back in the same box where she started, and after drawing the symbol from Adam's arm on the wall in her own blood, she curls up into the fetal position to cry it out. Just then, here comes her old friend, Mr. Skull, who tries to start healing her wounds. But at first, Lisa pushes it away. She suddenly realizes that the symbols from Adam's tattoos are actually arrows, forming a pattern that goes left, right, left, right. They must be directions for which tunnels to take, and after learning this, she decides that she wants to give it another try. Okay, using the symbols as directions is a good theory. The truth is that she has no way of knowing that the arrows really are directions, or even arrows for all that matter. They could just as likely be some kind of weird alien that she has absolutely no idea about. On the other hand, what she does know is that the path she just took leads her to the end. She just has to follow the same path, avoid the traps, and hopefully get rid of the zombie. And then when she gets to the chamber at the very end, instead of rushing through, wait for the fire to burn all of the thorns before crawling out through the exit. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. It's a good backup plan in case her arrows idea doesn't work, and even that method is going to have more than its fair share of twists, as she's about to find out. With a newfound sense of purpose, Lisa sets back out into the tunnels, quickly bypassing all of the obstacles, avoids the first flame trap, and dives through the underwater section all without any trouble. When she comes to the puddle of acid, she uses it to carefully melt the bracelet off of her arm, and finds another pattern of symbols hidden underneath, but it's in a different order from the one on Adam's wrist. Pressing forward, Lisa eventually returns to the section where she has to choose to go either left or right. This time she chooses right, following the directions from the tattoo on her arm. Now, instead of the memory room, she comes to another identical chamber, using the symbols to choose the tunnel on the left. A third fork in the road comes, and she continues following that pattern, taking the tunnel on her right. So far, things are actually going really well, but as soon as she reaches about halfway down the tube, a hole in the floor slides open, and up comes Mr. Zombie to crash the party. Racing through the tunnels, Lisa passes another fork and ends up in a slightly larger chamber. Suddenly, the chamber seals the two of them in, and the gravity in the room starts unpredictably inverting, sending them both crashing back and forth between the walls, floor, and ceiling until she finally reaches the other side. There's another fork in the road ahead, and thinking quickly, Lisa tosses her bracelet down one of the tunnels, distracting the zombie into going after it, while she hides out on the other side. The plan works, but now there's a problem. It seems like Lisa might have broken off from the correct order of turns. There's no turning back now, so Lisa decides to see where this tunnel leads and eventually comes to a strange, membrane-like door up ahead. Pushing through, Lisa comes out on the other side of that looking like Ace Ventura popping out of that fake rhino, and emerges into some kind of fleshy cave. As she looks around, she realizes that she's surrounded by strange alien figures on the other side, and one of them even leans in to share a weird little moment where they touch their foreheads together, with Lisa here relieved to just see anything that even remotely resembles another person. In the next room, she finds her bracelet lying in the center of the floor, but somehow Mr. Zombie is there too. Lisa tries to grab it as quietly as she can, but just as she does, the timer loudly rings with 1 minute left to go, and the zombie begins chasing her as she doubles back the way that she came. Okay, before we go back into those tunnels, I need to point out that Lisa here might be about to turn her back on the best chance of her actually getting out of this place. We already know that the tunnels are full of impenetrable walls and death traps, but these weird alien caves seem like they might be the closest that she's come yet to the outside world. Here's what I'm thinking. Using the broken bracelet, Lisa could kill the zombie and then try to slice her way out through one of these weird meat sacks. She'll probably have to fight the aliens when she gets to the other side, but who knows? Maybe they're not as tough as you might expect, and Lisa can battle her way out of wherever she is, instead of having to go back through the way that she came. The tunnel quickly fills with torches, and Lisa slides into the hideout, flipping the zombie off from the safe side of the glass, but this time, the fire never comes. The glass opens and the wall starts pushing her back out into the tunnel, but Lisa braces herself against it, and after pinning her foot against the zombie's forehead, she uses the force of the closing wall to crush his skull. With 11 minutes back on the clock, Lisa comes to another fork in the tunnel. The symbols on her wrist say that she needs to go right, but just as she's about to go, a child's ball bounces out of the passage to her left. Lisa sits there in shock as her daughter Nina emerges from the darkness, trying to get the woman to follow her down the wrong tunnel. For a moment, Lisa almost goes with her, but she knows in her heart that what she's seeing is not real, and after apologizing to the girl, she reluctantly turns back to follow the correct path. The girl follows her back to the fork, and while they're giving each other a long goodbye hug, she makes a strange comment saying, "We are all proud of you." But when Lisa opens her eyes, the girl has disappeared. The tunnel leads to a sharp bend. Lisa finally sees the light of day, waiting for her at the other end. But as she crawls closer, a series of timed chopping blades suddenly descends from the ceiling. She's able to pass by the first two by timing out the intervals between when they shut, but the last blade is moving too fast for the trick to work. With no other choice, she launches herself through as soon as it opens, but is just a little too slow and her left foot is painfully cut completely in half. Lisa screams out in pain, still dragging herself forwards towards the light at the end of the tunnel, but when she reaches it, she discovers that it's only another screen. Even after coming all this way, there's nothing left for her to do now but accept the end, and as the chamber fills with torches, she's suddenly levitated up towards a bright white light. On the other side, Lisa finds herself in a strange alien paradise where her daughter comes to greet her. The girl explains to her mother that her physical body died many times, but now, the two of them can finally live here together, reunited with each other once again. Okay, I've been putting it off for the entire video, but WTF, mate, what the hell just happened? I probably would have given up a long time ago, so big shout out to her for seeing her way through this crazy adventure. But what would you do if you were in this situation? Let us know down in the comments below. Thank you, as always, for watching. Leave a like and subscribe, and check out the How to Beat playlist for more videos just like this one. I'm the guy, I'll see you in the next video, and have a damn good day.